The Buckman Hall was named after Buckman. He was a former director of the Psychiatric Center, and that was a recreation hall. They have bowling alleys and swimming pools. Nice. And we were very disappointed because when they closed the center, we wanted to have that for the town. But because that it requires it to be staffed constantly, it's very expensive to staff it. It just we weren't willing to take it over at that time. And so now when we go over there, many of the doors are open. We cannot go inside the buildings, but you could look inside the door and you could see the architecture, you could see the current state of decay. And it's a shame because a lot of times these buildings, if we would have taken action right away to use them for an alternative use, it would have been a lot cheaper and a lot more practical. Once you let the weather come in and start to rain and the coldness and warmness, it causes warping and things to chip, so it makes it very difficult.
Building 7 also connects to Buildings 21 and 22, which served as geriatric, drug treatment, more admissions offices. 21 and 22 were built in 1957 and were initially meant for continued care. All 3 buildings have fallout shelters in case of an attack. 7 still has a security system, and police are allowed to enter the building because it is so structurally sound.
But for a period of time, before this building was built, there was no morgue, and so all the people who died were brought over to Pilgrim. The only thing is if you died over the weekend, there was no transportation, so they would take the people and put them in the cooler where they would store the food down at the storehouse at Building 44. They have a little corner of the building, and so you'd have to wait till Monday morning, and the paddy wagon will come by and bring you over there. So hopefully they didn't do that too long. Yeah.
And this story just in from the wires of the Associated Press. The incidence of mental illness in the United States appears to be on the increase.
He's losing his mind.
Strapped to the bed, semi-conscious acting dead. Spit on the head nurse and got brushed like I smacked the fed. Holding me down while the nurse brought me drugs. Took out the needle like Rock Raider and shot me up like Courtney Love. A fucking zombie on Hal Dog. Look how I'm walking, standing around.
In 1933, 3 buildings were built into a complex called Group 4, or as we call it today, the Quads. The Quads are made up of 3 separate buildings attached by Building 42, and each stood 4 stories high. Buildings 41 and 43 connect to make what looks to be a 4-building apartment complex from an aerial shot. Along with its 2 courtyards, it was made this way to allow the most light into each ward of Group 4.
My greatest satisfaction working in Kings Park, I would say, is that I felt, even to this day, it was my favorite job because I felt I could make a difference in someone's life. In the sense that, again, a small act of kindness. I felt like me being there, the Psychiatric Center was a better place because I cared about people, and I felt a deep connection with all the people there. My mother had worked with developmentally disabled children, and so I was always exposed to that, and she impressed that upon me. You have the ability to change. You may not have the ability to change the world, but you can make your part a lot better. And that's the perspective I took.
Building 42 had a kitchen and dining hall for the geriatric patients of 41 and 43, and smoke could be seen rising from the cupola on top of 42. The cupola on top frequently caught fire from all the grease, but fortunately it never burned down.
I saw only the patients that were well managed enough to go out. But I would say in my history of living here in Kings Park, when I was a kid, you would hear the screams so loud from the windows. But as I got older, that tend to be muted a little bit more as the more effective psychotropic drugs came into effect. In fact, Group 4, which is just to our right over here, is during the 50s. That was where they first started the Thorazine experiments. And it was definitely a dividing line. It was before Thorazine and after Thorazine. The whole manner of the psychiatric center changed. And so if there was one drug I would point to that was really made the change, it would have to be the Thorazine.